Hello, I'm Tyler, and welcome to the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Movies, The Godfather Part II, as well as the newest Star Wars film, Solo: A Star Wars Story. Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is our semi-regular guest, AJ.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
How's life on the coast?
It's all right. It's a little more humid over there, but it's good to be back in the dry Midwest.
I love it here.
It's great. No, it's home. It's home. I love coming home.
Sure. So I'm glad to have you back for this because we'll talk about the Star Wars one in the next segment, but it kind of feels like we're going full circle on that now because we did our first episode together was Rogue One: A Star Wars Story.
Oh, that's true. And I also did Star Wars, the original Star Wars, on the show too, I believe.
Yeah. We didn't do Last Jedi, but we'll do all this. I'll have you on for all of the spin-offs.
Which is ironic because that's probably the one I have the strongest feelings about. As you well know.
We didn't book you for that. We don't need more Star Wars conflicts.
No more opinions.
I haven't gotten that many comments whenever I put these on YouTube, but like the one that I remember very distinctly was some guy who's like, anyone who likes The Last Jedi should be reviewing movies. And I'm just like,
whoops.
glad to contribute.
I can step off now if you need me to.
So, Godfather Part II.
Godfather Part 2.
Have you seen it before?
I have, yes.
Okay, this is the first for me because I'd only seen the first one.
Oh, really?
And I gotten a lot of crap for that because even my girlfriend was like, "You haven't seen The Godfather II? You're supposed to be a movie critic."
That is surprising. I just recently watched the third one, Part 3. But before that, I had seen 1 and 2. 1 I've seen the most. 3. You know what? We're not talking about the 3, but just real quick.
We can talk about all 3.
It's not because the bar was set so high in just popular opinion with the first 2 Godfathers. 3 was held in much lower esteem than I think it rightfully should. I think Andy Garcia in that is one of the better performances in the trilogy. And yeah, it follows a lot of the same beats as the other 2, and it doesn't feel as fresh, but I think it's still enjoyable, especially if you're a fan of the saga as it is.
I always forget. Was that Francis Coppola or Sofia Coppola?
That was Francis Coppola.
Okay.
He cast his daughter in the role, and she was
okay.
Definitely one of the weaker parts of the movie. She's a fantastic director, and she should know her place there.
Yeah, for some reason I kept thinking that he gave it to Sophia, just like this is like my handing off to the daughter.
No. It's Coppola, all 3.
Okay, that was
or
a mistake on my
Francis Ford, all 3. I guess that doesn't really clear things up.
All right, so Godfather II. I had not seen it before now. I've seen the original one several times. I watched it back in high school, and I didn't understand any of it. I saw it in a movie theater 2 years ago at the Hollywood Boulevard when they did one of their special revival screenings, and I was like, this is perfect. It's a very difficult movie, but it's absolutely perfect.
It's near impossible to poke holes in.
Yeah. I'm sure someone's tried, but...
I'm sure someone has.
And so, yeah, this is my first time watching Godfather 2, and I think this is a movie I'm going to have to ruminate on because I need to watch it a couple times and get it, because every time I watch a Godfather movie, there's always so much to it that I don't always get the whole breadth of everything that's happening the first time.
They are dense movies and long movies, so you're getting a lot of story in a long
3.5 hours for the second one.
The Godfather is, I think, just short of 3 hours, so this really upped the ante in many ways.
Yeah, and this one doesn't even have Marlon Brando, so you're just like, oh my gosh.
It cashed in its Marlon Brando and raised it a Robert De Niro.
You think that's raising? I don't know.
I don't know. I just said it as a phrase. I didn't really think about it that much.
I said the thing. I don't know if it means anything.
I'll stand by it. I mean, they've both had some serious missteps in their career, but when they're on, it's hard to deny their raw talent.
Sure, and it's definitely fascinating to see them both playing the same character, albeit at different times, and that kind of cuts into what the Godfather 2's big, I guess, gimmick you would say is that it's two stories. It's the story of Michael Corleone after his baptism at the end of the first Godfather, going going from inheriting the family to becoming the new Godfather, and we see the youth of Vito Corleone as he's chased out of Sicily and eventually grows to become the man who would become the Godfather. And we see a lot of contrast between how both of their characters ultimately go on this journey of getting getting hurt by the mob, getting sucked into the mob, eventually taking over the mob, and it gets to different effects because Vito's, as Roger Ebert put it, Vito. At the end of the story, you mourn for the loss of Vito Corleone in The Godfather, but by the end of Godfather 2, there's not much of Michael left. He's just it's just like a hollow man.
He really is. He becomes a dark shell of him, the Michael Corleone that we meet at the wedding in the first Godfather, and it really is a great continuation of that story, as well as a prequel, as it were, to Vito Corleone's story, and how that mirrors each other, and kind of you can see father and son, their paths are similar, but they make very different decisions and end up in very different places. And it really is a fascinating character study, even more so than the first one.
Do you think it's better than the first one, or where do they rank for you?
I personally do not. I prefer the first one. I think it's a tighter story. Second one is definitely more personal and goes more into Michael's story and his downfall, I suppose. And I also appreciate the kind of backtracking aspect of seeing more of Vito Corleone's character. But personally, I like the straight story of the first Godfather and kind of each iconic vignette of that, just making a whole movie that is, as he said, basically perfect.
Yeah, I mean the first one, you know it's great because there are so many individual moments of that movie where you can just pluck it out and just it's that moment. Like take the cannoli or
the gun in the toilet.
Any scene with Marlon Brando, it's just perfect. And
sure.
I mean, obviously it's kind of a joke now because this performance kind of turned every subsequent Marlon Brando performance into a joke, but like it feels like it's a completely different thing compared to his youthful performances On the Waterfront and.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, he was a 40-some-year-old man playing a 70-some-year-old man, very convincingly. That I think because it's become a joke, it's kind of retroactively become a very underrated performance. How well he's playing above his own age.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be talking about that. We've already talked about Godfather on this show, but for the second one,
Part 2 also has its fair share of iconic moments. For sure.
None of them stick quite as much as those memorable gotcha lines in the first one, though.
I agree.
Nothing is as good as waking up with the horse under your bed. So
that truly is one of the greatest moments of cinema. No joke. It really
is, but it's funny.
It's so well built up, and but you know, Michael kissing his brother. I'm blanking on the name, but at the party in part 2, and Fredo, and. Just knowing that he's the one that betrayed him, that moment is heartbreaking because it's the last kind of link to his father that he's finally severing and becoming his own dark Don himself.
Sure, and that's the Robert Duvall character, right?
No, that's the what's his name? He's a brilliant actor. He died far too soon. He was in like 5 movies in the 70s, and they're all classics, like Godfather Part 2, Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon. No, it's the older brother that kind of is kind of sidelines to Vegas and runs the show there a little
Quick
bit.
note to the editor: put the name right here. Thank you,
I,
Terry.
I'm so embarrassed because we all
it's
should
okay,
know
it's
his
okay.
name. He's an absolutely fantastic actor and had a wonderful but short-lived career.
There's a lot of actors that do that. I mean, we didn't go all in talking about Robert De Niro's character portrayal yet, have we?
Oh, we have not.
I mean, that's like, I don't know if I would say it's better than the main plot, but it's like it's super fascinating, like watching Vito's young life, just because he starts the movie with the absolutely tragic scene where he's at his father's funeral and the mob just starts systematically killing everyone he knows because his father offended the mob, and the mob's just like, well, now the son's he's gonna go for vengeance on us, so take him out.
It's fascinating in a very dark way. Vito Corleone's story is the American dream at the time, and him going from an extremely poor Italian American family, going back to Sicily and then coming back to America and making himself in a new world. And watching that story is indeed fascinating. While it's not maybe as pure an American dream as I think many would like to envision for themselves, it really is. He comes to America poor, he works his way up and ends up becoming a powerful industry leader, you could say.
In the darkest way possible. That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the next segment. We'll be discussing Solo, a Star Wars story. Hello and welcome back to the show. Now we get to talk about apparently the most controversial film since Birth of a Nation, because apparently the internet's decided that Star Wars is the place where our culture is going to fight to the death. So
I think you're a movie too late on that. I think that might have been The Last Jedi.
No, I mean I think Solo cemented a lot of people's opinions. At least like that's the what seems to be the argument, because I saw The Last Jedi got so divisive, and I was on team pro Last Jedi, which feels so lonely whenever I listen to people on the internet talk about it. And
hey, I'm here. I mean, most of the time I'm in Virginia, but I'm here for you and spiritually in the Last Jedi camp.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Real quick, I want to offer a correction, if I may. John Cajale is the name of the actor that we were trying to think of last segment. My publicist helped me out with that. And yeah, he deserves all the respect in the world. He really is incredible. Anyways.
Cough.
Back
cough.
to Solo. No, he just truly is. Back to Solo. What were your thoughts on it?
I call it the okayest Star Wars movie in history. There are bad Star Wars movies. There are unwatchably bad Star Wars movies. There are masterpiece Star Wars movies. There are pretty good Star Wars movies. And this is firmly in team okayest Star Wars movies. There are lots of things that I individually can pick out that I like. I like Alden Ehrenreich because I liked him in Hail Caesar, and I was happy he got cast. And Donald Glover as Lando is really fun. There are some great individual characters, and the bad guy is really fun. But as a whole, I found it very unsatisfying. I thought that there was a very simple thing you could do with the story to make it work really well, and I think they tried to do that, but it didn't work that well. And then it ends on a moment of absolutely gratuitous fan service that doesn't actually make any sense if you know the extended lore. So,
well, it makes even less sense if you don't know the extended lore, which I would guarantee most of the audience didn't. I'd have to agree with you. It really is about as middle of the road a Star Wars movie you can get. Very entertaining as a blockbuster, I think.
I thought it was boring. Like I was just like for a significant portion of especially in the middle of the film. Once it gets to the Kessel Run and a little beyond that, it picks up a little bit, but it takes a long time to kind of get moving and feel like it's got consistent pace to it.
I actually very much disagree. I thought the Kessel Run was a very drawn out sequence. That was probably the least interesting part of it. It was a whole sequence developed or made to, as you said, fan service this one line from the original trilogy, and it was dark. It was hard to see. It was personally, I thought it wasn't very well shot, and it was just a CGI fest. And their objective is to just shoot for this through this small gap, and it just seemed very done before. And I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that sequence, but I thought that was one of the weaker parts of it.
It worked for me. I mean, at least it felt like that there was some urgency to that scene, which it helped make the scene a little more exciting for me. Even though, yeah, I would agree that the CGI made it look much cheaper than like a similar scene in like The Empire Strikes Back, where they did very similar visual stuff to that. But I don't know. It felt like it was the movie was trying to assemble this facsimile of all these best moments of mentioned things in Han Solo's backstory, and then conveniently place them in one story, which feels constricting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but Han Solo is supposed to have this complex, vague past that you don't see off screen in the original movies, because he's just a smuggler. That's all he is.
He's a charming side character, basically. I mean,
he's functionally, like a lot of people say, he's like the best character in the original 2 movies.
He's the most entertaining character, I'll
Sure.
say. He's got the best lines. He's the coolest character. He's the one that you want to be as a viewer. But in essence, he comes in and he becomes a larger character. But in the first Star Wars movie, he enters halfway through the movie and becomes a key character at that point. But he's really not. He's not a Luke. He's not a Leia. He's not an Obi-Wan. He's
a guy.
He's just a guy.
I would say, categorically speaking, I'm not against doing this. Like, everyone said that doing a Solo spinoff was a bad idea, and I was like, he's your most popular character. You might as well do one more thing with him and just then pack it in there. Like, I didn't mind it, and I thought that there was at least a nugget of a good idea in this film of, let's do the reverse of Luke Skywalker's story. How do you take a character who's optimistic and young and ready to go out into the universe, and break him down to the point where he's cynical and doesn't want to be a part of that fight? And I thought that this movie, at least, it sets up the bare bones of a story that's interesting in that sense, but it doesn't fill it in with interesting ideas or world building, or it just fills it in with fan service moments and things that are supposed to fit in where they're supposed to go in a kind of Hollywood-esque script like this.
I agree for the most part, and they threw in many things that were just very slight references to the original trilogy that only the core fan group would have enjoyed, and it's great for that. Like, personally, I don't remember the dice, or I forget what they are.
Apparently, it's just a small background detail.
Never noticed it, and that's almost a key plot point in this movie. And I think I won't go as far as to call that a misstep. I just think it's an interesting point of emphasis. And I thought I agree with you absolutely that Alden Ehrenreich was a better Han Solo than I expected him to be. Even though I also enjoyed him in Hail Caesar. How do you fill Harrison Ford's shoes? But he did a fine job. That being said, I think the more interesting character, the character I would have enjoyed seeing the movie about, was Emilia Clarke's character. I don't remember her name, the character's name.
I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up coming back during the Boba Fett movie, because they announced that immediately after.
But give her a movie. That's a character. That is a complex, interesting, just... I'm blanking on other adjectives, but you get the idea. Character. I think a movie about her would be something that would service Star Wars well.
Maybe
at this point,
I would definitely want her back as a supporting character, if nothing else. Where do you think the state of Star Wars is as of right now?
Struggling.
Well, this was the most expensive Star Wars movie ever. They reshot almost everything with a brand new director, because they fired the Lego movie directors and they just brought in a new team, just rebuilt it from the ground up, made it. I don't know if the original cut was bad. I don't know if it was outlandish, didn't work. They didn't want to take a risk on it, so they just made it safe. And it was clear that someone at Disney was just like, Last Jedi is going to be controversial. It is controversial. We need something that's middle of the road so that it doesn't offend anyone. And that's
that's why you get Ron Howard.
Yeah, I like Ron Howard, but
he's
fine. I love Apollo 13, and Cinderella Man is great too.
He has made some really good movies, and he has made some really forgettable movies.
Sure,
I think this is one of his forgettable movies.
Sadly, he's a workman director.
I would have more enjoyed seeing Lord and Miller's version of this. I think
the important thing is that Clint Howard showed up. That's the important thing. So
I think the reason they were let go is the tone they set in the movie wasn't what producers wanted. So they needed somebody that had a more sincere, kind of loving feel to it. Because, Lord and Miller have parody backgrounds. 21 Jump Street, Lego movies. They're funny movies, but they don't take themselves seriously at all. This movie needed to be, I think in the producer's mind, taken seriously in order to bring back Star Wars to its kind of genuine, innocent roots.
But you needed the solo movies are where they should have people taking these huge risks.
I agree. I'm just saying I think this is what the producers were thinking at the time when they got Ron Howard on instead. I think the remnants, or at least what I thought the remnants of Lord and Miller's style was, like Lando's droid compadre. I thought that was one of the better moments of the movie, that comedic relief.
What do you think is the future going forward now? Because a lot of people, I know the internet's like, they want Kathleen Kennedy to be fired. They want Ryan Johnson's trilogy canceled. They're I don't see them. I don't know what they could do at this point that could solve it. I mean, I've heard.
I think bringing back JJ to direct Episode 9 is a good choice because he's sure-handed and gives you what you want. And I think that's what they need right now, to kind of play it safe and slowly win back Star Wars fans to their side.
That's not going to work because the Star Wars fans have already decided they don't like. A lot of them decided they don't like it. So.
Until the next good movie comes out. We're talking about the internet and we're talking about Star Wars fans, the most fickle groups in existence.
Yes.
They'll change their minds at the drop of the hat. If Episode 9 is anywhere above average, Star Wars is going to be the greatest franchise of all time again.
So the lesson here is to fire literally everyone at Disney World, cancel the 20th Century Fox deal, yeah, whatever.
And get directors that do what you want them to do, not have their own voice.
Yeah, exactly. That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the final segment where we'll be getting AJ's movie recommendation for the week. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back to the final segment. We're going to hand things over to AJ now for his movie recommendation this week.
Well, this week I tried to look at the directors of the movies we talked about, Coppola and Ron Howard. Ended up not really seeing anything that I really felt strongly about and wanted to recommend. So I thought more about kind of tone, or rather themes, of the movies we talked about. And Godfather Part 2, very much about excess and letting that corrupt. So I decided to talk about a movie that I really enjoyed from this year. It was released on Netflix, called A Futile and Stupid Gesture. This is a story about Doug Kenney, the creator of the National Lampoon magazine.
Oh, okay. My dad talked to me about that a little bit.
It's if you like that era and the people involved in that story, it's everything you want. It's really entertaining, fast pace, frantic, but I think that captures kind of the time of the late 70s and early 80s, and the substances that many in Hollywood were on at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
It stars Will Forte as Doug Kenney, and it follows his time at the Harvard Lampoon, then graduating, creating the National Lampoon, creating two of the biggest, best comedies of all time, Animal House and Caddyshack, and kind of showing how infuriatingly impossible it is to keep your pulse consistently on the zeitgeist of American comedy, and kind of how that can ruin your life and make your life almost meaningless if you can't fulfill that as he felt his job was to do.
Okay. You brought up not being able to find projects from the directors of these, and it reminded me of the weird realization I had about Francis Ford Coppola recently. He is a very inconsistent director. Like after the 70s, he wrote Patton, Godfather I, Godfather II, Conversation, Apocalypse Now. It's just all downhill from there. It's Outsiders, pretty good. Then
Peggy Sue Got Married is all right.
Captain EO.
Jack.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then...
Which has its followers. I haven't seen it.
A green screen horror movie.
Godfather Part 3.
Yeah.
Say what you will about it.
Follow the Rotten Tomatoes scores. It's a slope. It's hilarious.
But, yeah.
Did you know you can actually visit his editing studio in San Francisco? Yeah, the American Zoetrope film production studio is actually just a building in downtown San Francisco, and there's a restaurant in it where they shot multiple scenes in The Godfather.
Oh, okay.
I had a film teacher who went there, and he didn't realize what it was until halfway through. He was like, "Man, there's a lot of photos of The Godfather around." Oh, and then he realized that they literally edited The Godfather 3 stories above him.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Oh, it is. I would love to go there sometime.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to watch every Francis Ford Coppola movie, but...
Hey, if you reach the highest highs, you gotta reach the lowest lows.
That's what...
It's all about balance.
Yeah, cocaine helps, but... but yeah, my dad had told me about that movie. What was it called?
A Futile and Stupid. I say futile. It's probably better pronounced futile.
Feudal.
And Stupid Jester.
A feudal jester set in medieval Europe.
And yeah, it strikes a great tone. It breaks the fourth wall in very unique ways. And yes, I've seen both Deadpool movies. I think it does. I think it does it better than that.
Fair point.
It's just very clever. The narration is perfect. It's cast extremely well. Joel McHale from Community as a young Chevy Chase is, I think, a standout. Like I said, Will Forte as the lead from SNL and Last Man on Earth. And Donald Gleason is also in it, which I didn't realize. He's a main character, and I didn't know it was him until the end of the movie, and I saw the credits.
That's all the time we have for this episode of the show. You can find past episodes of the show on the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at NASocialCritI. That's critic without the C at the end. And you can find more of my written reviews at Geeks Under Grace and theantisocialcritic.tumblr.com. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.
Hello? Great news. I found us an audition.
Morning, Gloria.
Wait, you got what?
I found us a posting for an audition for this really cool sounding indie drama being made by this eccentric, outsider, artistic type.
You did? Where'd you find it?
Craigslist? Look, it'll be fine. I've done gigs like this before. We shoot in a few weeks, you'll get a shot at a big role to show off to the casting guys, and I'll get the cash I need to stay in town for another month, okay?